Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage the presenting sponsor of the 2021 North Carolina Faith and Freedom Coalition Salt and Light Conference, Bo Hines.
Now, I have the absolute privilege today of introducing a steadfast patriot, a man that is obviously in God's wheelbarrow, who's leading the charge to help us recruit America First patriots to run in 2022, the man that I like to refer to as America's Congressman, Madison Cawthorn.
Wow, what an honor. What an honor it is to be here with you all today. You know, being here at the Salt and Light Conference, seeing all of these people. You know, I was in Washington on Friday. I flew back yesterday, and then I got to come here. Can I tell you how much I appreciate being around normal Americans? I'll tell you, the people in Washington, D.C., they don't have the same kind of values we do. They don't believe the same things that we do. And I have to thank a lot of people in this room. I see a lot of them over here to my left. But a lot of people in this room. I was recently in the hospital because I had a blood infection that was had wiped me out. I was incredibly weak, and I was getting destroyed. And I will tell you, patriots in Western North Carolina got together and started praying. And that power of prayer healed me. So, the very first thing I want to say is I'm a strong believer in the power of prayer. You know, the power of prayer saved me 7 years ago after I was in a terrible car accident. And I believe that the power of prayer will save this country in the coming decades. Because I'll tell you, when I'm in Washington, D.C., I know a lot of you consider the place to be evil and vile. And I am here to tell you with firsthand knowledge, it is evil and vile. But I will tell you, when I'm there, I don't feel an overwhelming sense of darkness and as if the devil has complete dominion of that area, because I feel a spiritual battle going on Capitol Hill. And patriots like all of you in this room on your knees praying that we have the cover within this spiritual fight is what it will take to save this country. Because, my friends, I'll tell you, when we're in Washington, when I have to look Nancy Pelosi in her cold, evil eyes every single day, and, you know, we all laugh because it's funny, but I'll tell you, she literally just passed a bill yesterday trying to say that we can abort babies on demand all the way up until right before the day of birth. When we hear this, when we hear the fact that if a baby comes through a botched abortion, is alive, sitting there on the table, they then still have the right to murder that child. We realize that when I quip and say I look her in her cold, evil eyes, it's not a joke. These people hate us. And I am tired of the Republican Party that believes that if we bend the knee to the Democrats and the radical leftists and the socialists enough times, then eventually they'll start liking us. You know, eventually they'll have us on MSNBC and they'll give us a fair. No. That is not what's going to happen. I will tell you, the only way that we take our country back is when strong, God-fearing patriots decide it is time for us to stand up and say no to your tyranny. Because I'll tell you, whenever the people allow government to have power based in an emergency, power that they don't have before, the government and the people in Washington who are addicted to power, they will create an emergency to take that power again. We are seeing this today. You know, I just saw it recently. We are 18 months, 2 presidents, 3 jabs in the arm into this 14 days to slow the spread. And they are using COVID-19 as an excuse to rip our rights away from us. And you know, I'll tell you, if people that I serve with in Washington were to see this room right now, they would freak out. They would say, you can't have this many people together at one time if they're Republicans. Because, you know, when the Democrats get together, you know, you see Nancy Pelosi going maskless to get her hair done in the middle of a pandemic. You see Nancy Pelosi having a maskless fundraiser when the peasants that are serving her all have to wear masks. When you see the hypocrisy that is going on in Washington, my friends, I believe it's time for a little civil disobedience to say no more. You see what I mean about normal Americans? Yeah, I'll tell you, it is time for us to say no more, and to say, because there's a great quote that I love saying, that if trouble is to happen, if danger and tyranny are to come to our country, let it happen in my day, so that my children will not have to suffer under it. And my friends, when I look out at this crowd, I'll tell you in Esther, there's a great verse that was really the guiding verse of my life, and it says that we were born for such a time as this. And when I look out at this crowd and I see the evil that we are facing in this country, when I see the tyranny that is going on all over the world, I mean, you look at Australia, these people are literally beating their people into submission. When I see that going on, I realize that God must have a lot of trust in each and every single one of us to put us on this earth for such a time as this. And my friends, I will tell you, I am sick and tired of people always blaming the Democrats for what's going on in this country, because I believe that for the last 4 or 5 or 6 decades, it has been because of spineless Republicans, and it has been because of pastors who tell their congregations, oh, you know what, we are here just to be liked and we don't want to ruffle any feathers. No, you are not here to be liked. You are here to be a salt and light in this earth. And so when I know people like Jason, like people like Ralph Reed, like people like I think we have Troy Maxwell here as well. When we have incredible men of faith, women of faith who are standing up, very similar, and I'm going to tell you one of my favorite bits of history from the Revolution, because if you go into the Capitol and you look up into the dome, all around is this perfect circle, and it's a painting that follows America through its founding all the way up, really since the new land was found, since John Smith came to the Americas, since the Revolution happened. It goes all the way up until, the very last picture of this, which I'm very proud of, is, the Wright brothers on the North Carolina beach flying for the very first time, and America taking its rightful place, soaring with the eagles. But when I look at that picture, there's this beautiful section of it. It's about 13 feet long, and it's the part that depicts what's going on in the Revolutionary War. And you see this very incredibly small band of men who are mismatched in their uniforms, fighting against overwhelming numbers of British and German mercenaries during the Revolutionary War. And when all of us think, when I think of 1776, it seems like, oh, well, that was bound to happen. Of course it was going to happen. But one, it only happened because of the providence of God. And if you look back to see all the miracles and the miraculous things that happened in that war with George Washington and so many of our patriots, you'll see it's because of God. But when you look and you see that incredibly small band of people, it is to show that only 3% of Americans actually stood up to fight against the British. Imagine the minority that was. And so imagine the bolstering that happened when the Black Robe Regiment, men of faith, pastors of faith who went to their congregations, preached on Sunday, took their black robes of the faith off, and underneath it, they wore the Patriots uniform. And they said, any man who is willing to fight, it is time for us to go defend religious liberty. And they went out and they fought. And my friends, when I remember that, I realize that now is a time for our pastors and our congregations, like this one here, like many of you that you represent. It's time for us to stand up and declare boldly that as men and women of faith, we have a duty to stand against tyranny. We have a duty to be civically involved. We have a duty to save this country for the next generation. Because so many Christians, I feel like, oh, well, we don't want to get involved in culture and we don't want to get involved in politics. And look where that's gotten us. I just heard Ralph Reed, I just heard Bo Hines talking about it. And, I've got a friend in Congress who's not running for re-election. And I'm telling you, when I say I need reinforcements, men of faith, Bo Hines is that kind of person. But I will tell you, when we start thinking that, Christians are supposed to be laissez-faire, we're not supposed to really, truly be involved in government or whatever's going on, I encourage you, look back into the Old Testament. Look at David, look at Daniel, look at Esther. Look at all of these people who influenced the governments of their day to uphold Christian principles. Because this country is incredible in its founding. I think we got our value system from the Judeo-Christians, from Jerusalem. I think we figured out the rights of all people when we studied ancient Athens. Our system of government, having a republic from the early days of the Roman Republic. We studied all of those, and then we put them together, and then God put his hand of providence upon this land. And I will tell you, when we have been this blessed, and then I am literally on the House floor having to debate if we are going to defend the nation of Israel, God's chosen people, it sickens me to my core. You remember what I said about those cold and evil eyes. They don't just reside in Nancy Pelosi. There are so many people on the other side of the aisle from me that I see every single day. And you know what? There's some Democrats who are elected who will say, oh, well, I'm just a moderate and the socialists have really taken over. No, they are cowards who have sat down and allowed the radicals to take over their land. And so I started out by asking you all a call to prayer. And I'm asking you all to pray for your elected representatives. Obviously, we have to pray for Joe Biden, we have to pray for Nancy Pelosi, but pray for your Republicans. Pray for the conservatives, the people who are men and women of faith who are up in Washington, D.C. fighting right now. Because God determines who's on the throne at all times. And I believe he has me in Washington. That is my mission field, and that is where I am to do battle on his behalf. And so when I look out and I see what the Democrats are doing, when I see the rights they are trying to strip away from my generation, when I see that, you go to a school board and you see that they're trying to push pornographic images on fifth graders, that they're trying to teach people this critical race theory, which teaches you, oh, well, if you're born this color, then you're an oppressor, and if you're born this color, then you're oppressed. No, that is racist to its core, because I believe that God created every single one of us with the ability to choose who we are going to be on this earth, what values we are going to serve. And so, people have oftentimes been saying that, oh, well, you can't say that you don't see color because that's actually racist. I reject that, because we as Christians don't see color. We welcome everybody from every walk of life into faith, because that is who we are as Christians. And so when I see that they are trying to indoctrinate an entire generation, and I am the very first of my generation, Generation Z, to be elected to Congress. And so when I am there, it's incredibly personal to me, because I know just how hard they are fighting to manipulate and indoctrinate our children. I was incredibly blessed to be homeschooled my entire life, and so I didn't have to face a lot of the indoctrination that many of my peers have had to face. And when you look to a generation, you say, man, how could people be willing to just accept this socialism, be willing to accept the platitudes of the left? Realize it's because of our education system. I don't even call them public schools anymore. I call them government schools, because they do not work in the public interest of the American people. And so, my friends, I want you to pray for your elected representatives. Pray for the young children who are being raised right now in this time of incredible division. And also pray for yourselves. Pray for your brothers and your sisters, for your wife, for your husbands, for everyone that you know, because if we are all in this room right now thinking that we are going to lead a revolution in this country that gets us back to our founding principles, and it's not going to cost us anything. It's not going to cost us any of our friends. It's not going to mean that, oh, well, hey, if you wanted to force a vaccine mandate for me to be able to come eat at your restaurant, well, that means I'll go cook at home. It's going to cost us some things. And I think that all of us in this room need to make a decision right now that we realize that this is a generational struggle. Just like those people who built those beautiful cathedrals in Europe, many of them never got to see the actual final product. And I believe that we may not in this room be able to see the final product of freedom being the reigning principle that guides America once again. We may not see it, because I'll tell you, the Democrats, and you have to give it to them, they stick together like you couldn't believe. They have precise messaging. They have taken over many of our institutions, whether it's education, the mainstream media, even though it's anything but mainstream. When we realize what we're going up against, I think it would become easy to become disheartened. But I want to leave you with this, looking back to our history. Just like I told you, that small number of patriots that's on the dome fighting against the British. Only 3% of Americans stood against the greatest empire to that date and started the greatest country this world has ever known. When I look at this crowd, I see people who are ready to be unified in a fight against evil and tyranny. And my friends, I am calling on you right now. Please, we've got to stop sending people to Washington, D.C. who have pleated pants and tasseled loafers, and they like seeing their name in the paper just every other week. Send people who are going to go there. Because raise your hand if you've ever read a very terrible article about me. I know I've read about 1 million of them. There are so many people that go to Washington, D.C., and they shudder at the idea, oh, they could write an attack ad about me. They could say that I'm evil, that, I kidnap puppies, and well, we can't do that. I can't stand up to these people. Look at the power they have. If your representative believes that, vote them out of office. If your representative believes that his calling in Washington, D.C. is to be liked and to be loved by the people that hate our values and that hate our country to the core, then we need new representatives, because, my friends, it is time. It is time for the American Christian church to come out of the shadows, to say no longer are we going to allow our culture to be determined by people who hate the things that we believe in. We are going to stand valiantly for God's incredible, inerrant truths that predate any version of government. Because, my friends, if we lose this country today, if we bend the knee to the Democrats today, our country will be lost forever and our children will never know what freedom is. It's our duty to stand up. I encourage you, let us stand united as men and women of faith to fight for our country.